Now, John, many of our viewers are in the workplace,
Yes.
and they're relating to colleagues and neighbours and family and friends, and they're trying to engage them about the gospel, about Christianity. And one of the biggest hindrances I think many of us Christians find is how can we believe in a God of love if there is so much suffering in the world? How do you answer that question?
Well, that's the hardest question we face, the absolutely hardest question. And my first response to it is to say, I have no simplistic answer to that question. I don't even like to talk in terms of answer, but I think there's a way into it. There's a way of thinking about it that can bring peace to many people. Now, this is complicated. And it's one of the reasons I wrote my little book, Where is God in a Coronavirus World? Because that has raised this question acutely for many, many people. And many of my friends, whom I respect, I understand why people become atheists. I've been to Auschwitz quite a few times, and I've never not wept there.
Yeah, likewise, I did too.
This is the hard, gut-wrenching problem. But let's look at it then. First of all, there are two sources for pain and evil. There's what we call moral evil, the bad things people do to each other. And then there's what we sometimes call natural evil, which is a strange thing. And that is things like coronavirus, tsunamis, earthquakes, cancers, all this kind of thing, where, as far as we know, human beings aren't directly involved. And that can be the more difficult problem. But secondly, and this is where my heart goes out to people, there are two viewpoints. It's one thing to be an oncologist treating a patient. It's another thing to be a 24-year-old mother who's just been told she's got an inoperable tumor. There's the inner perspective of the sufferer, and there's the outward perception of the observer. And we got to deal with both. And the kind of questions that both of those sides raise can be very different. Now, the observers will ask the intellectual questions. How can you possibly reconcile this with a good God? But then I want to say, so you're an atheist then? Absolutely. I've given up on God. Many people have sat and told me straight, I've given up on God when I heard these various things. I said, it's evil, isn't it? Yes, it's absolute evil. Where do you get your concept of evil from?
Yeah.
Because look, one of your fellow atheists is a man called Richard Dawkins. And he follows the atheism down, and he comes to the conclusion, this universe is just as you'd expect it to be. If at bottom there's no good, no evil, no justice, DNA just is, and we dance to its music. But I said, look, I'm puzzled. If there's no good and no evil, why are you talking about a problem of evil? You've actually got rid of moral concepts. Now I said, that bothers me, because I find myself to be a moral being. So does Dawkins, actually. I find my heart crying for justice. Are you really telling me there's no justice?
Yeah.
Now, you will respond to me, but you believe in God. How can you possibly do that? Well, let's come to that in a minute. But it seems to me it's no solution getting rid of the very concept that you're using to judge the problem. Secondly, on the atheist side, you think you've got rid of the problem. That's just the way the universe is. Let's face it. Get real. But you have got rid of something.
Yes.
You've got rid of all hope. Atheism is a hopeless faith. And I say that to people directly. It is hope. You have no hope to offer to that young woman of 24 with a tumor. Absolute none. So that's a dead end. Atheism doesn't work. It gives you a kind of temporary satisfaction, but in the end you have no hope. You have defined it out of existence conceptually, and you've no actual hope because there's no life after death. Now, I'm a Christian. How do I begin to square it? And I say, well, at the heart, and this is coming right to the heart of it directly. Depends on the person, of course, you want to engage gently with, because people are hurting, their nerves are raw, they've lost a relative and all that. But I say, you know that at the heart of Christianity there's a cross. That is suffering and extreme pain. Now, try and come with me, if you will. I know you might find this very difficult to accept, but the Christian claim is that the person on the cross was God incarnate. So if that is true, and just come with me, if that is true, we can legitimately ask, what is God doing on a cross, if I might put it that way? And surely, doesn't it show you that if that is so, then God has not remained distant from the problem of suffering, but has himself become part of it? Now, I think that's the beginning of a step, but it's not the final step. If God is like that, where can we find hope? Well, the next step is, the next big Christian claim is that God by his power raised Jesus from the dead, so that death is not the end. That changes my whole universe. That changes everything. Because if that's true, it means that there is hope beyond the grave. And sometimes I risk telling them a personal experience. I say, you know, my sister had a 22-year-old daughter, just married to a youth pastor in a church, and she got a brain tumor that killed her. She held on to her faith in Christ. How did she possibly do that? It was a traumatic period for my sister, and it took a long time to manage to come to terms, but she hasn't lost her faith either. Why? Because Jesus brings hope. He doesn't guarantee a release from the physical process of death, but what he does guarantee is a salvation that transcends COVID, transcends brain tumors, transcends death. Now, atheism can't offer anything like that. It doesn't mean we don't suffer, we don't have pain, but it means that we have a way in. So I don't give an answer, but I like to point people towards a person who I believe is the answer.
I really hope that you have enjoyed this interview. Can I encourage you to hit subscribe so that you can get more of these interviews in the future?